The scent of pine and amber incense burned my nostrils as I scrubbed the marble floors of the great hall. Moonlight streamed through stained glass windows, casting blue and silver shadows across my hands that were red and raw from hours of preparation for tonight's full moon ceremony. Outside, the wind whispered through ancient oaks, carrying the distant howls of pack members already gathering in the forest clearing. I wasn't supposed to be here when they returned. The servants, humans like me who served the werewolf packs, were meant to prepare, then disappear, invisible labor, forgotten faces. I'd fallen behind after Matron Greaves added the eastern corridor to my duties without warning, punishment for dropping a crystal goblet yesterday. "You'll finish every inch before you leave, Clara," she had hissed, her eyes flashing yellow for just a moment, enough to remind me what she was and what I wasn't. My fingers tightened around the coarse brush as I worked faster, the soapy water soaking through the thin fabric of my dress at the knees. The ceremony would begin at midnight, less than an hour away. By then, I needed to be back in the servants' quarters, hidden away with the others, the humans who existed on the periphery of this supernatural world, tolerated but never truly seen. Around my neck hung a small silver key on a leather cord, my mother's final gift before she died 3 winters ago, for a door not yet found. She'd whispered, as she pressed it into my palm, her eyes clear despite the fever. "When the time comes, you'll know which lock it opens." I kept it hidden beneath my clothes, my one rebellion against the pack's rule that servants owned nothing of value. The sound of footsteps echoed down the corridor, not the hurried shuffle of servants, but the measured, confident stride of the pack. My heart lurched. They were returning early. I gathered my bucket and brushes, preparing to flee, when the massive double doors at the end of the hall swung open. The footsteps stopped. In the sudden silence, I could hear my own heartbeat, a frantic bird trapped in a too small cage. Slowly, I raised my eyes from the floor. He stood there like a figure carved from midnight itself. Towering and broad-shouldered, dressed in ceremonial black leathers adorned with silver runes that caught the moonlight. His face was all sharp angles and shadows, framed by dark hair that brushed his shoulders. But it was his eyes that froze me in place. Amber and gold, luminous with power, fixed directly on me, King Alaric of the Northern Packs, Alpha of Alphas. In 5 years of service to the pack, I'd glimpsed him only from afar, a distant figure on balconies or at the head of processions. Never this close, never alone. I dropped my gaze immediately and sank into a deep curtsy, my wet knees sliding on the marble floor. "Forgive me, Your Majesty. I'm finishing now. I'll be gone in moments." The silence stretched like a bowstring drawn too tight. I didn't dare move, didn't dare breathe. "Look at me," he said finally, his voice deep and resonant in a way that seemed to vibrate through my very bones. Pack law was clear. Servants did not make eye contact with pack members, especially not with royalty. To do so was to challenge, and challenges had consequences. Yet his command was absolute. Trembling, I lifted my face. Our eyes met again, and something unreadable crossed his expression. Surprise, perhaps, or curiosity. Something that made my skin prickle with awareness and danger. "What's your name?" he asked, taking a step toward me. "Clara, Your Majesty." My voice emerged as barely a whisper. Another step. "You shouldn't be here now, Clara. I know. I'm sorry. I was ordered to finish before—" "By whom?" The question snapped like a whip. "Matron Greaves, sire." He nodded slowly as though confirming something to himself. Then he did something entirely unexpected. He inhaled deeply, his nostrils flaring slightly, scenting the air, scenting me. His eyes widened almost imperceptibly before narrowing again. "Stand up." My legs shook as I obeyed, keeping my head bowed. Water from the scrub brush had soaked the front of my gray servant's dress, and I was painfully aware of how small and bedraggled I must look before him. He circled me slowly, his boots clicking against the marble floor I'd just cleaned. I felt the weight of his gaze like a physical touch, assessing, searching for something I couldn't understand. "How long have you served this pack, Clara?" 5 years, Your Majesty. And before that? The question stirred memories I'd fought to bury. Flames consuming our village at the edge of werewolf territory, My mother and I fleeing through the forest, eventually seeking refuge with the very creatures our neighbors had feared. Survival at the cost of freedom. My mother and I came during the border wars. We had nowhere else to go. He stopped his circling directly before me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body, smell the wild forest scent of him. Pine and earth and something primal that made my heart race for reasons I didn't want to examine. Your mother. Is she also in service here? She died, Your Majesty. 3 winters passed. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite sympathy, but a momentary softening. Yet you stayed. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. I had nowhere else to go. The doors at the far end of the hall opened again. A tall, severe-looking woman entered, dressed in ceremonial silver robes that contrasted sharply with her copper hair. Lady Serena, the king's advisor and rumored lover. Her cold eyes took in the scene, the king standing before a soaking wet human servant, and her lips tightened to a thin line. Alaric, she said, dispensing with his title in a way only the inner circle dared. The elders are waiting. The ceremony must begin with the rising of the moon. He didn't acknowledge her immediately, his amber eyes still fixed on me. Then, without turning, he said, "Tell them I'll be there shortly." Lady Serena's gaze flicked between us, calculation and suspicion evident in every line of her face. The lunar alignment won't wait for... I said. He cut her off, his voice deceptively soft but lined with steel. I'll be there shortly. She stiffened, then inclined her head in a bow that somehow managed to convey both compliance and disapproval before withdrawing from the hall. When the doors closed behind her, King Alaric turned back to me. You'll attend the ceremony tonight. The blood drained from my face. Sire, humans aren't permitted at the full moon rituals. It's forbidden for us to... I'm well aware of the laws, Clara. A faint smile curved his lips, transforming his severe features into something almost approachable. Almost. I'm also the one who makes them. He reached into a pouch at his belt and withdrew something small that glinted in the moonlight. Holding it out to me, I saw it was an intricately crafted silver pin in the shape of a wolf's head with amber eyes. His personal insignia. Wear this. It marks you as under my protection for the night. No one will question your presence. My hand trembled as I took the pin, our fingers brushing momentarily. A jolt like static electricity passed between us, making us both freeze for an instant. The eastern antechamber, he continued, his voice slightly rougher. Go there now and wait. Someone will come for you when it's time. But why? The question slipped out before I could stop it, and I immediately ducked my head in apology. To my surprise, he didn't reprimand me for the impertinence. Instead, he reached out, one finger gently tilting my chin upward until our eyes met again. His touch burned like fire against my skin. Because, he said softly, there are things hidden in plain sight in this pack. Things even I am just beginning to see clearly. His hand fell away, leaving my skin tingling where he'd touched it. Without another word, he turned and strode toward the doors Lady Serena had used, his powerful form silhouetted against the moonlight. Only when he was gone did I realize I'd been holding my breath. I looked down at the silver wolf pin in my palm, its amber eyes seeming to watch me with the same intensity as its masters had. What had just happened? Why would the Alpha King himself notice a human servant, let alone command her presence at their most sacred ritual? Nothing about this made sense. With shaking hands, I pinned his insignia to the collar of my damp dress and gathered my cleaning supplies. As I hurried toward the eastern antechamber, the silver key around my neck felt suddenly warm against my skin. My mother's voice echoed in memory. For a door not yet found, I couldn't shake the feeling that, whatever door this night was opening, there would be no going back once I stepped through it. The eastern antechamber was small but elegant, clearly designed for distinguished guests to await audience with the pack leadership. I'd cleaned it countless times but had never sat on its velvet chairs or touched the delicate silver ornaments that adorned its shelves. Now, I perched awkwardly on the edge of a midnight blue settee, afraid to lean back against the expensive fabric while my dress was still damp. Outside, the moon continued its ascent into the night sky, Soon the ceremony would begin, a ritual I'd only heard whispered about by other servants. Some said the pack members shifted into their wolf forms and hunted together. Others claimed they performed blood rites to strengthen their bond with the moon goddess they worshipped. Whatever happened, humans were never permitted to witness it until tonight, until me. I touched the silver wolf pin at my collar, its metal warm from my skin. The Alpha King's personal sigil, his protection. But protection from what? A sharp knock startled me from my thoughts. The door opened before I could respond, revealing a young man with tawny hair and the lithe, powerful build all werewolves seemed to possess. Unlike the ceremonial attire I'd glimpsed on the king and Lady Serena, he wore simple leather armor marked with the sigil of the royal guard. His eyes widened slightly when he saw me, or more specifically, when he noticed the silver wolf pin at my collar. Whatever surprise he felt, he masked it quickly. "I'm Reed," he said, his tone carefully neutral. "The king sent me to escort you." I rose from the settee, smoothing my still damp dress with trembling hands. "I'm Clara. I know who you are." Something in his voice made me look up. There was no contempt in his expression, just a strange wariness, as though I were a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. "We should hurry. The ceremony is about to begin." He led me through corridors I'd never been permitted to enter, up spiral staircases and across covered bridges that offered dizzying glimpses of the pack grounds below. Werewolves in ceremonial attire streamed toward a massive stone circle at the edge of the forest, torches lighting their way. The full moon hung above like a silver eye, watching everything. "Why did he choose me?" I asked finally, breathless from trying to match Reed's pace. "Why would the king want a human servant at your sacred ceremony?" Reed slowed, glancing back at me with an unreadable expression. "It's not my place to question the Alpha's decisions, but you know something." A muscle jumped in his jaw. "There are rumors about you." My heart skipped a beat. "What kind of rumors?" "We're here." He stopped before an ornate door carved with phases of the moon. 2 guards stood at attention outside, their eyes widening at the sight of me before focusing on the pin at my collar. They stepped aside without comment, though I could feel their stares burning into my back as Reed ushered me through. We emerged onto a stone balcony overlooking the ritual grounds. Below, hundreds of pack members formed concentric circles around a central altar stone bathed in moonlight. The energy in the air was palpable, wild, electric, dangerous. My human senses could only catch fragments of the power they must feel on such nights, but even that was enough to make my skin prickle. At the center stood King Alaric, his powerful form unmistakable even from a distance. Lady Serena was beside him, along with 7 other figures I assumed were the pack elders. "Wait here," Reed instructed, positioning me at the back of the balcony where shadows would partially conceal me from those below. "Don't move from this spot unless the king commands it." I nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. Reed hesitated, then added in a lower voice, "Whatever happens tonight, remember that not all of us agree with the old ways." Before I could ask what he meant, he melted away into the shadows, leaving me alone. The ceremony began with a haunting howl from King Alaric that raised goosebumps along my arms. The entire pack answered, their voices blending into a primeval chorus that seemed to shake the very stones beneath my feet. I pressed myself deeper into the shadows, suddenly terrified by the reminder of how different they were from me, how much power they held. What followed was both beautiful and terrifying. The pack moved in complex formations around the altar, chanting in an ancient language I didn't understand. At certain points, selected members would approach the center, where King Alaric would mark their foreheads with what looked like silver ash. Then, Lady Serena stepped forward, bearing a ceremonial dagger. My breath caught as she presented it to the king with a bow. The moonlight transformed the blade into a shard of pure light. "Blood of the Alpha protects the pack," she announced, her voice carrying clearly to even my human ears. King Alaric took the dagger, and without hesitation, drew it across his palm. Crimson blood welled immediately, dripping onto the altar stone. A collective murmur passed through the assembled werewolves. "My blood to your blood," he intoned. "My strength to your strength." The elders approached one by one, each cutting their palms and adding their blood to the stone. After them came what I assumed were the ranking pack members, each repeating the ritual in order of status. I was so focused on the ceremony that I didn't notice someone approaching until a shadow fell across me. I turned with a startled gasp to find Lady Serena standing there, her green eyes cold as she studied me. "So you're the human he's become fascinated with," she said, her voice soft but edged with steel. "How unexpected." I dropped my gaze, falling back on years of trained subservience. "I don't understand why I'm here, my lady." "Don't you?" She circled me slowly, much as the king had done earlier. "Perhaps it's those unusual eyes of yours, or that pale gold hair. Humans can be such exotic creatures." There was something dangerous in her tone, something that made me want to flee. Instead, I stood perfectly still, fighting to keep my breathing even. "Or perhaps," she continued, "it's what you carry inside you that interests him." My hand instinctively moved to the silver key hidden beneath my dress. Her eyes tracked the movement, a smile curving her lips. "You don't even know, do you?" She laughed, a sound like glass breaking. How delightfully innocent. "Know what?" The words escaped before I could stop them. Lady Serena leaned closer, her lips near my ear. "Why you never quite fit in with the other humans. Why your mother brought you to us, of all places, when your village burned. Why our king can't seem to look away from you." Her finger traced the outline of the silver wolf pin at my collar. "Did you think it was your charm that caught his attention?" A throat cleared behind us. Reed stood there, his expression carefully blank. "The king requests the human's presence, Lady Serena." Her smile vanished. "Now? In the middle of the blood rite?" Those were his orders. Something like fear flickered across her face before she composed herself. "Very well." She turned back to me, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Enjoy your moment in the moonlight, little Clara. But remember, curiosities are examined, then discarded." Reed waited until she had glided away before approaching me. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly. I nodded, though my heart was racing. What did she mean? About why I'm here? He glanced around, ensuring no one could overhear. "There's a prophecy," he said, his voice barely audible, "about a human born under a blood moon who would change the packs forever. Some believe it means destruction, others, salvation." He looked at me intently. "When were you born, Clara?" The question caught me off guard. "During the long winter. My mother said a red moon hung in the sky that night." Reed exhaled slowly. "The blood moon eclipse, 23 years ago. But that doesn't mean—" "We need to go." He cut me off, his expression closing. "The king is waiting." He led me down a different stairway that brought us directly to the edge of the ritual grounds. Up close, the energy of the gathering was even more intense. The air itself seemed to vibrate with power and anticipation. The crowd parted silently as Reed guided me toward the central altar where King Alaric stood. His eyes found mine immediately, and that same jolt of recognition passed between us. Behind him, Lady Serena watched with barely concealed hostility. When we reached the altar, Reed bowed to his king and melted back into the crowd, leaving me standing alone before the most powerful werewolf in the Northern Territories. "Clara," King Alaric said, and something in the way he spoke my name sent a shiver down my spine. It sounded like a claim. "Your Majesty," I managed, fighting the urge to run. He held out his hand, the one he had cut during the ritual. The wound was already healing, werewolf regeneration sealing the edges even as blood still glistened on his palm. "Take my hand," he said, his voice gentle, but leaving no room for refusal. Every instinct screamed that this was dangerous, that whatever was happening would irrevocably change my life. But beneath the fear lay something else, a strange sense of inevitability, as though my path had always been leading to this moment. I placed my trembling hand in his. His fingers closed around mine, warm and strong. A murmur rippled through the watching pack members. "The blood ritual is sacred to our kind," he said, his eyes never leaving mine. "For 1,000 years, it has bound pack to pack, wolf to wolf. But there is an older ritual still, one our ancestors performed when they wished to know the truth behind the masks we all wear." Lady Serena stepped forward. "Alaric, you cannot mean to—" "Silence." The word carried the full weight of his authority. She flinched as though struck and retreated, her face pale with fury. He turned back to me. "This may hurt," he warned softly, "but I give you my word. No lasting harm will come to you tonight." Before I could respond, he raised our joined hands and pressed my palm against the ritual dagger Lady Serena had left on the altar. Pain flashed sharp and bright as the blade cut my skin. I gasped, instinctively trying to pull away, but his grip was unbreakable. Blood, my blood, welled from the cut, dripping down to mingle with his on the ancient stone. The reaction was immediate and shocking. Where our blood met, the stone began to glow with a pale blue light that grew steadily brighter. Whispers erupted around us, some fearful, others awed. King Alaric's eyes widened, the amber in them seeming to burn brighter in response to the stone's glow. "It's true," he breathed, his voice thick with wonder. The light pulsed once, twice, then shot upward in a brilliant column that illuminated the entire ritual ground. Within the beam, I saw impossible things: wolves running through ancient forests, battles fought by warriors with familiar faces, a woman with my eyes but dressed in royal finery, standing proudly beside a wolf king. Visions, memories, but not mine. The light faded as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving spots dancing before my eyes. In the silence that followed, I became aware that every werewolf in the clearing had dropped to one knee, heads bowed. Every werewolf except King Alaric, who still held my bleeding hand in his, and Lady Serena, who stood frozen in shock. "The blood remembers," King Alaric announced, his voice carrying across the stunned gathering. "The prophecy is fulfilled. The lost bloodline returns." He turned to me, and to my astonishment inclined his head in a gesture of respect I'd never seen him offer anyone. "Princess Clara of the Eastern Territories," he said, "daughter of Queen Alara, thought lost in the border wars. Last heir of the royal bloodline we believed extinguished." His eyes held mine, filled with emotions I couldn't begin to decipher. "Welcome home." "Princess? Queen?" The words made no sense. My mother had been a village healer, a human woman with kind eyes and gentle hands. Not a werewolf, not royalty. "There's been a mistake," I whispered, my voice shaking. "I'm human. My mother was human." A sad smile touched his lips. "Your mother was my father's closest ally. A werewolf queen who chose to hide her only daughter among humans, to protect you from those who would see your bloodline end forever." His gaze shifted momentarily to Lady Serena, whose face had gone rigid with barely controlled rage. "But I've never shifted," I protested. "I have no wolf form, because your wolf has been bound," he explained gently. "A powerful spell cast by your mother as she lay dying, her last act to keep you safe until you could be found." He touched the silver key that had slipped free from my dress during the ritual. "This is no ordinary key. It's the key to your true nature." The world seemed to tilt beneath my feet as everything I thought I knew about myself collapsed. My free hand clutched at the key, the metal suddenly burning hot against my palm. "The ceremony must continue," Lady Serena interrupted, her voice brittle, "regardless of revelations." King Alaric straightened, authority settling around him like a cloak. "Indeed it must, but with a change to the traditional order." He raised our still joined hands, blood mingling between our palms. "Tonight we renew the alliance between the northern and eastern packs. An alliance of blood, and, should the princess consent when she has adjusted to her true nature, perhaps something more." His meaning was clear, and a fresh wave of whispers swept through the gathered werewolves. He was suggesting a mating alliance, a political union that would join our packs permanently. Before I could process this newest shock, a howl of pure rage tore through the night. A massive black wolf with silver-tipped fur leapt from the shadows toward us, fangs bared and aimed directly at my throat. Time slowed. The black wolf hung suspended in the air, jaws open, death in its eyes. My body froze, trapped in the ancient human response to predators, paralysis that precedes the kill. But King Alaric moved with supernatural speed. One moment he was beside me. The next, he had shifted into a massive silver-gray wolf, intercepting the attacker in midair. They collided with a sound like thunder, rolling away from the altar in a blur of teeth and claws. The ritual grounds erupted into chaos. Some pack members shifted to protect their alpha, while others formed a defensive circle around me. Reed appeared at my side, pulling me back from the snarling mass of fur and fangs at the center of the clearing. "It's Victor," he explained grimly, drawing a short sword from his belt. Lady Serena's brother. Through gaps in the protective circle, I caught glimpses of the brutal fight. The black wolf, Victor, was nearly as large as Alaric, his movements quick and vicious. But the Alpha King fought with calculated precision, each strike targeted and devastatingly effective. A pained yelp cut through the night as Alaric's teeth found Victor's shoulder. The black wolf stumbled, and in that moment of weakness, Alaric pounced. His jaws closed around Victor's throat in a hold that could end the attacker's life with one sharp twist. The clearing went silent. Even the night creatures of the forest seemed to hold their breath. Slowly, the silver-gray wolf released his grip and backed away. Victor lay motionless for a moment, then shifted back to human form, a tall man with Lady Serena's copper hair, now gasping for breath, a bloody wound visible on his shoulder. Alaric shifted as well, his transformation fluid and controlled compared to Victor's pained reversion. Despite the savagery of the fight, the king appeared unmarked, except for a single scratch across his cheek. He stood over his defeated opponent, expression cold. "You dare attack your alpha?" His voice was dangerously soft. "You dare attempt to harm a royal guest under my protection?" Victor raised himself to his knees, hatred burning in his eyes. "She is an abomination. A half-breed who will destroy everything our ancestors built." He spat blood onto the ground. "You would taint the royal bloodline for a prophecy interpreted by old fools." Lady Serena pushed through the crowd, her face a careful mask as she approached her brother. "Forgive him, my king. The shock of tonight's revelations has clearly unbalanced his mind." "Do not speak for me, sister," Victor snarled. "You've whispered the same fears in private." The Eastern wolves were weak, that's why they fell so easily in the border wars. "And now you would have us bow to their half-human survivor?" King Alaric's expression hardened. The Eastern pack fell because they were betrayed from within. Their strength was never in question. His gaze shifted briefly to Lady Serena before returning to Victor. "For the attempted murder of Princess Clara, the penalty is death." "No!" The word escaped me before I could think. All eyes turned in my direction, shock evident on many faces. No one defied the Alpha's judgment. Reed's hand tightened on my arm in warning, but I stepped forward anyway. "Please, Your Majesty, there's been enough bloodshed because of me already." Alaric studied me, his amber eyes unreadable. "Justice must be served, Princess." "Then serve it with mercy," I said quietly. "Show the pack that the Eastern bloodline returns, not with vengeance, but with compassion." A murmur rippled through the gathered werewolves. Victor stared at me with confused hatred, while Lady Serena's calculating gaze moved between her brother and the king. After what seemed an eternity, Alaric nodded. "For tonight, Victor will be imprisoned. His final fate will be decided once Princess Clara has had time to adjust to her true heritage and take her rightful place in our council." He signaled to his guards, "Take him away." As 4 warriors dragged Victor from the clearing, Alaric turned to address the pack. "The ceremony is concluded for tonight. Return to your homes. What has occurred here must not be spoken of beyond our borders until we are prepared to announce the princess's return formally." The crowd dispersed slowly, many casting curious glances in my direction as they left. When only the inner circle remained, Alaric, Lady Serena, Reed, and a few elders, the king approached me again. "You showed mercy to one who would have killed you," he said, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "That is either great wisdom or great foolishness." "Perhaps it's neither," I replied, suddenly exhausted as the night's events caught up with me. "Perhaps I've simply seen enough death." Something softened in his expression. He turned to Reed. "Take the princess to the royal wing. The blue suite has been prepared." Lady Serena stepped forward, her composure regained. "Surely it would be more appropriate for her to stay in the Eastern Quarter, given her heritage." "The Eastern Quarter has stood empty for 20 years, Alaric replied evenly. "It is no place for her tonight." His gaze locked with Serena's. "Unless you wish to argue the point further." Her jaw tightened, but she bowed her head in submission. Of course not, my king. Good. He turned back to me. Rest tonight, princess. Tomorrow, we begin the process of unbinding your wolf and restoring what was taken from you. The exhaustion hit me in waves as Reed escorted me to the royal wing, a part of the pack house I'd only entered to clean, never to inhabit. My mind spun with everything I'd learned, everything I'd seen. Princess, werewolf, prophecy. None of it seemed real. The blue suite was aptly named. Midnight blue draperies, silver blue tapestries, and a massive four-poster bed with cerulean silk hangings dominated the space. It was larger than the entire servants' quarters where I'd slept for 5 years. Someone will bring you fresh clothes, Reed said, lingering awkwardly at the door, and food, if you're hungry. I sank onto the edge of the bed, my legs finally giving out. Reed, do you believe it? What they said about me? He hesitated, then closed the door and approached, dropping to one knee so our eyes were level. I was barely more than a cub during the border wars, but I remember when Queen Alara visited. She had your eyes. He studied my face, and when your blood touched the moonstone, that light doesn't lie, but I feel human, I whispered. I've always felt human. The binding spell your mother cast is powerful magic. Few could attempt it. Fewer still succeed. His expression grew serious. But Clara, you need to understand what this means. The politics of the packs are complicated. There are those who will see your return as a threat to the power balance that's existed since the Eastern Territories were absorbed by the Northern Pack, like Lady Serena and her brother. He nodded grimly. The Silverclaws have been second only to the royal family for generations. Serena has expectations regarding her future place beside the throne. You mean she expects to be queen? Many assumed they would mate eventually, yes. His eyes flicked to the silver wolf pin I still wore at my collar, until tonight. The implications made my cheeks burn. Surely he doesn't actually intend to... I couldn't even finish the sentence. Reed's lips quirked in what might have been amusement. Our king doesn't make idle suggestions, especially not during sacred rituals. He rose to his feet. Get some rest, princess. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges. After he left, I sat motionless on the edge of the bed, too overwhelmed to even cry. My entire identity had been stripped away and replaced with something foreign and frightening. I was no longer Clara the servant, invisible and forgettable. I was a princess, the last survivor of a royal bloodline, a werewolf in human skin. And somewhere in the pack house, a king with amber eyes was apparently considering me as his future mate. I touched the silver key that hung around my neck, the key to my true nature, as Alaric had called it. My mother's final gift. Had she known this day would come? Had she planned for my eventual discovery? A soft knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. I expected a servant with the promised clothes, but when I called enter, it was King Alaric himself who stepped into the room. He had changed from his ceremonial leathers into simpler attire, a black tunic and trousers that somehow did nothing to diminish his commanding presence. The scratch on his cheek had already healed, leaving no trace of the violent confrontation with Victor. I started to rise, unsure of the proper protocol, but he waved me back down. Please don't stand on ceremony, he said, remaining near the door as though conscious that his presence in my chambers might cause discomfort. I wanted to check that you were settling in. It's all very luxurious, I managed, hyper-aware of the contrast between my damp, dirty servant's dress and the opulent surroundings. A hint of a smile touched his lips, a poor substitute for what should have been yours from birth. His expression grew serious. How are you truly, Clara? Tonight has brought revelations that would shake anyone's foundations. The kindness in his voice undid me more effectively than any command could have. To my horror, tears spilled down my cheeks, tears I'd been holding back since the moment he'd named me princess. I don't know who I am anymore, I whispered. Everything I believed about myself, about my mother, it was all a lie. Alaric crossed the room in a few long strides, then hesitated before sitting beside me on the bed, maintaining a respectful distance. Not a lie, he said gently. A necessary deception to keep you alive. Why? What happened during the border wars? Why did my mother hide me among humans? Pain flickered across his features. The official history claims the Eastern Pack was weakened by internal conflicts and fell to enemy forces from beyond our territories. The truth is more complicated. He looked away, his profile sharp against the moonlight streaming through the windows. Your mother was a visionary leader who advocated for greater cooperation between werewolves and humans. This was controversial, especially among the older, more traditional packs. When you were born, a child of the blood moon prophecy, it confirmed many fears. Some believed you would bring about the end of werewolf isolation, forcing us to integrate with the human world. And that's why they attacked, because of a prophecy about a baby? Partly. There were also those who coveted the Eastern Territory's resources. His jaw tightened. My father was among those who came to your mother's aid when the attacks began, but we were too late. The royal compound was in flames when we arrived. Everyone was presumed dead, but my mother escaped with me. He nodded. She must have used the binding spell in those desperate moments, hiding your wolf nature so completely that even our keenest trackers couldn't sense what you were. It was brilliantly executed, and heartbreaking that she felt such measures necessary. How did you find me now after all this time? I didn't, he admitted. It was pure chance. I scented something unusual this morning while passing the servants' quarters. A hint of wolf beneath the human scent. So faint I nearly missed it. I had you assigned to prepare the great hall so I could observe you more closely. His amber eyes met mine. When I saw you there, something resonated, as though my wolf recognized yours, even bound as it is. I thought of my mother, the woman who had raised me with such love, who had taught me to hide in plain sight, to be invisible but observant, who had pressed a silver key into my palm with her dying breath. The key, I said suddenly, lifting it from around my neck. You said it's the key to my true nature. What did you mean? Alaric studied the small silver object. It's a moon key, an ancient artifact few know how to create. Your mother was a skilled practitioner of the old magic. He gently touched the intricate whorls etched into its surface. When the time is right, this will unlock the binding spell and release your wolf. And when will the time be right? His eyes met mine, the amber depths reflecting centuries of werewolf wisdom. That, Clara, is for you to decide. I won't force this change upon you, despite what tradition or prophecy might demand. His words surprised me. Everything I'd ever heard about alpha werewolves suggested they took what they wanted, commanded what they desired. But at the ceremony, you announced me as princess. You spoke of alliances and other possibilities. A faint smile curved his lips. Politics required a certain decisiveness in that moment. Victor's attack only confirmed that hesitation would be seen as weakness. His expression grew serious again. But this decision, whether to embrace your werewolf heritage, must be yours alone. Your mother fought to give you that choice. I won't dishonor her sacrifice by taking it away. Relief and confusion warred within me. Thank you, I said finally, for giving me time. He stood, his imposing height emphasized by the moonlight casting his shadow across the floor. Rest now. Tomorrow, you'll meet with our historians and lore masters who can tell you more about your mother, your pack's history, and the prophecy that has shaped your life from birth. He moved toward the door, then paused. Whatever you choose, Clara, know this. You are no longer alone. After he left, I lay back on the unfamiliar bed, still fully dressed in my servant's clothes, the silver key clutched in my palm. Outside, the moon continued its journey across the night sky. The same moon that had witnessed my birth during the blood eclipse, the same moon that had illuminated my mother's desperate flight through the forest with an infant in her arms. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to weep openly. For the mother I'd known, for the queen I hadn't, and for the ordinary life that had slipped away the moment the Alpha King had stopped before me in a hallway I was supposed to be invisible within. Morning arrived with soft golden light filtering through blue curtains and the gentle knock of a servant at my door. For a disorienting moment, I thought I was back in my narrow bed in the servants' quarters, that the events of the previous night had been an elaborate dream. Then I opened my eyes to the opulent blue suite, and reality crashed back. Enter, I called, sitting up quickly and trying to smooth my rumpled dress. A young woman entered, Emma, who had worked alongside me in the kitchens for years. Her eyes widened when she saw me, and she nearly dropped the tray she carried. Clara? She stammered, then flushed. I mean, Your Highness, I've brought your breakfast and some clothes. She gestured to the garments draped over her arm. The formality from someone I'd scrubbed floors with just yesterday made something twist painfully in my chest. Emma, please, it's still me. Her gaze flicked to the silver wolf pin I still wore, then away. The king has requested your presence in the library once you're ready. She set down the tray and carefully laid out the clothing on a nearby chair, a simple but elegant blue dress that would never have been permitted for a servant. Would you like help dressing? No, I said quickly. Thank you, but I can manage. She nodded, backing toward the door. If you need anything, just ring the bell. She gestured to a silver bell on the bedside table. As she turned to leave, she hesitated. Clara, is it true? What they're saying? That you're a princess? That you're one of them? I touched the silver key at my throat. I don't know what I am anymore, Emma. After she left, I ate sparingly from the lavish breakfast tray. Fresh bread, honey, berries, and smoked meats. The rich food sat uneasily in a stomach accustomed to servants' plain fare. The dress fit perfectly, though I wondered uneasily who had selected it and how they'd known my measurements. The library was located in the east wing of the pack house, a vast chamber with soaring ceilings and walls lined with ancient books. Reed was waiting outside to escort me. You look different, he observed as we walked, more rested than I expected. Appearances can be deceiving, I replied. Inside, I feel like I'm breaking apart. He nodded sympathetically. The first day is always the hardest. You speak as though you've experienced something similar. A shadow crossed his face. Not similar, but I know what it's like when your life changes overnight. He stopped before the library doors. The king is inside with Elder Thorn and Lore Master Wren. They've been researching your mother's binding spell since dawn. My pulse quickened. Have they found anything? It's not my place to say. He pushed open the heavy doors. Good luck, princess. The library was even more impressive inside. Morning light streamed through stained glass windows, casting colored patterns across long wooden tables covered in open books and scrolls. 3 figures looked up as I entered. King Alaric, a white-haired man I assumed was Elder Thorn, and a middle-aged woman with sharp features and intelligent eyes who must be Lore Master Wren. Princess Clara, Alaric greeted me, his deep voice warming something inside me despite my anxiety. He wore simpler clothing today, a dark tunic and leather pants that somehow suited him better than the ceremonial attire. I hope you rested well as could be expected, Your Majesty. Please call me Alaric when we're in private company. He gestured toward his companions. Elder Thorn was a friend of your mother's, and Lore Master Wren has been studying the moon key magic since I described your mother's gift. Elder Thorn bowed his head respectfully. Princess, seeing you now, it's like looking at Queen Alara in her youth. The resemblance is remarkable. You knew her well? I asked, drawn to this connection to the mother I was only now discovering. We grew up together, he said, his voice warm with memory. I served as her advisor until... He trailed off, pain etching deeper lines around his eyes. Until the betrayal. Lore Master Wren finished bluntly. Her sharp gaze assessed me with clinical interest. May we see the moon key, princess? It's essential to understanding the nature of the binding. With hesitant fingers, I lifted the silver key from around my neck and placed it on the table between us. In the daylight, its intricate engravings seemed to shift and change, never quite the same when I looked twice. Wren leaned forward, studying it without touching. Extraordinary craftsmanship. Queen Alara was one of the last practitioners of the ancient binding arts. She looked up at me. Did she tell you anything about it? Any instructions for its use? Only that it was for a door not yet found, I replied, and that when the time came, I would know which lock it opened. Alaric and Thorn exchanged glances. Typical Alara, Thorn said with a sad smile. even in her final moments, speaking in riddles. Not riddles, Alaric corrected. Protection. The less Clara knew, the safer she would be if captured. Wren's fingers hovered over the key without touching it. Based on my research, the binding spell doesn't simply hide a werewolf's nature. It locks it away completely. The subject wouldn't experience moon pulls, enhanced senses, or the emotional connection to a wolf spirit. Her eyes met mine. You've lived entirely as a human, correct? No unusual strengths or sensory abilities? I thought back over my life. I've always had good night vision, I admitted. And sometimes I can sense emotions from others. But I assumed everyone could. Remnants. Wren nodded. The binding couldn't completely erase your wolf nature. Fascinating. What happens if the binding is removed? I asked, the question that had haunted me since last night. Alaric answered, his voice gentle. Your wolf would emerge. You would experience your first shift, though at your age it would be challenging. A shadow crossed his face. Usually this happens in childhood, when the body is more adaptable. Would it hurt? The three exchanged glances. Yes, Elder Thorn said finally, but we would help you through it. And if I choose not to remove the binding? The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. Alaric's amber eyes held mine. Then you would remain as you are, human in form, werewolf by blood. You could still claim your title and heritage. But the prophecy, Wren began. Can wait. Alaric cut her off firmly. Clara needs time. Elder Thorn cleared his throat. There is another matter we must discuss. The nobility has called for an emergency council meeting this afternoon. News of the princess's return has spread throughout the pack. They will expect to see her. Alaric's expression darkened. So soon? Lady Serena was efficient in spreading the word, Thorn said diplomatically. Of course she was. I remembered her cold eyes, her veiled threats. What will happen at this council meeting? Questions will be asked about your legitimacy, your intentions, your future role within the pack structure, Alaric explained. Some will welcome you. Others will see you as a threat to the status quo. Like Lady Serena and her brother. The Silverclaws have powerful allies, Thorn acknowledged. But they are not the only influential family in the Northern Territories. Will I have to speak? The thought of addressing a room full of werewolf nobility made my stomach clench with anxiety. Only if you wish to, Alaric assured me. I can speak on your behalf. Pride straightened my spine. My mother's daughter, indeed. No. If I'm to be their princess, they should hear from me directly. Approval flickered in Alaric's eyes. Then we should prepare you. There are protocols, traditions. A commotion outside interrupted him. Raised voices, the sound of running feet. Reed burst through the doors, his expression grim. My king, Victor has escaped. Alaric was on his feet instantly. How? Guards found his cell empty at dawn. We believe he had help. Reed's eyes flicked meaningfully to me. He's left a message, written in blood on the cell wall. What did it say? Alaric's voice had dropped to a dangerous growl. The half-breed dies before moonrise. The room erupted into action. Alaric issued rapid commands while Elder Thorn and Loremaster Wren gathered the books and scrolls scattered across the table. I stood frozen, the silver key cold in my palm. We need to move you somewhere secure, Alaric said, turning to me. The sacred chambers beneath the pack house. No one can access them without royal blood. What about the council meeting? I asked. Postponed, he replied firmly. Your safety takes precedence. Reed stepped forward. The sacred chambers have only one entrance, my king. If Victor somehow penetrates our defenses, then we'll be trapped. I finished, a chill running down my spine. Alaric's expression hardened. What do you suggest? An idea formed in my mind, foolish perhaps, but born of 5 years living invisibly among wolves. Victor expects you to hide me away, to surround me with guards. What if we did the opposite? Absolutely not, Alaric growled. Hear me out, I insisted. The servants' passages run throughout the entire pack house. I know them better than anyone. All the hidden corners, the forgotten rooms. We could move through them unseen while your guards create a diversion. Thorn looked thoughtful. The princess has a point, my king. Victor will be watching the main corridors and known safe rooms. And where would you go? Alaric demanded. The pack grounds are extensive, but not limitless. I touched the silver key at my throat. My mother told me this key was for a door not yet found. What if she meant that literally? What if there's a place she prepared? Somewhere only I would know to look. The idea hung in the air between us. Alaric studied me intently, conflict evident in his expression. It's too dangerous, he said finally. I won't risk your life on a hunch. With respect, my king, Reed interjected carefully. We already have reports of Victor's allies watching the sacred chamber entrance. If we try to move her there, we'll be playing into his hands. Alaric's fists clenched at his sides. For a moment, I glimpsed the struggle between the king who must think strategically and the man who wanted to protect me personally. Very well, he conceded finally. But you won't go alone. He turned to Reed. Assemble a small team, warriors you trust implicitly. No more than 3. And you? I asked quietly. His amber eyes met mine. I'll be creating a very visible distraction. Victor wants you dead before moonrise, which means he must believe I'm preparing for the unbinding ritual tonight. A grim smile touched his lips. Let him think I'm gathering the necessary components in the sacred chamber. He'll focus on me while you search for your mother's safe haven. Elder Thorn stepped forward. I'll help the king. My presence will make the deception more convincing. I'll come with you, Princess, Lore Master Wren offered unexpectedly. If we do find a door that matches your key, you may need someone who understands the old magic. The plan formed quickly after that. I would change back into servant's clothing. The better to move unnoticed through the passages I'd used for years. Reed would select 2 trusted warriors to accompany us. Alaric and Elder Thorn would make a visible show of preparing for a ritual in the sacred chamber, drawing Victor's attention. As the others left to make preparations, Alaric lingered. When we were alone, he moved closer, his presence both intimidating and reassuring. I don't like this plan, he admitted quietly. Every instinct I have is screaming to keep you by my side, where I can protect you. The intensity in his eyes made my breath catch. Why do you care so much about my safety? Is it just because of my bloodline? The prophecy? He looked away, jaw tight. I've ruled the Northern Territories for 8 years. In that time, I've made decisions that cost lives, formed alliances of convenience, and compromised more times than I care to remember. His eyes returned to mine, surprisingly vulnerable, but in all that time, I've never met anyone who showed mercy to those who would harm them, who faced the complete destruction of their identity with the courage you've shown. His hand lifted, hesitating before gently touching my cheek. You ask why I care? Perhaps because in less than a day, you've reminded me of the king I once hoped to be. His touch lingered only a moment, but it left my skin tingling as though branded. Before I could respond, he withdrew his hand and stepped back. The vulnerable king replaced once more by the strategic alpha. Reed will find you when preparations are complete, he said, his voice returned to its usual commanding tone. Trust no one else. After he left, I stood alone in the library, one hand pressed to the cheek he had touched, the other clutching my mother's silver key. Outside, clouds had begun to gather, dimming the morning light and casting shadows across the ancient tomes surrounding me. An hour later, I was dressed once more in a servant's gray dress, my hair pulled back in a simple knot. The transformation felt both comforting and strange, like donning a familiar costume for a role I no longer played. Only the silver key around my neck and the wolf pin concealed in my pocket marked me as something other than what I appeared. Reed found me in a hidden alcove near the kitchen, accompanied by 2 warriors, a taciturn woman named Kira, with a jagged scar across her cheek, and a younger man called Eli, whose kind eyes belied the deadly-looking daggers strapped to his thighs. Lore Master Wren completed our unlikely group, her scholar's robes exchanged for practical traveling clothes. The king has begun the diversion, Reed informed us, his voice low. Where do we start? I closed my eyes, thinking of my mother. If she'd created a safe haven for me, Where would it be? What clues might she have left? When I first came here with my mother, I said slowly. She insisted on taking me on a walk through the forest at the eastern edge of the Packlands. She showed me an ancient oak tree and told me a story about a queen who hid her most precious treasure inside a living heart. I looked at Reed. I always thought it was just a bedtime tale, but... The Heartwood Oak, Lore Master Wren interjected, eyes widening. It stands at what used to be the border between northern and eastern territories. Can you find it again? Reed asked. I nodded. I've gone there often over the years. It made me feel close to her. Then we start there. He checked the short sword at his hip. We'll use the servants' passages to reach the eastern exit, then move through the forest. Stay close and stay quiet. The secret network of corridors and staircases I'd used for years felt different now. No longer passages of shame and invisibility, but pathways to freedom. We moved swiftly and silently, encountering only a few startled servants who quickly averted their eyes when they saw Reed's uniform. When we reached the small door that led to the kitchen gardens, Reed peered out cautiously. Clear for now, but we'll need to cross open ground to reach the tree line. There's another way, I said. The old drainage tunnel beneath the herb garden. It comes out in the forest. Kira raised an eyebrow. How do you know all these secret ways? When you're invisible, you see what others don't. I led them to a weathered stone wall where a rusted grate was partially hidden by climbing ivy. This tunnel was abandoned years ago when they built the new water system. The passage was damp and narrow, forcing us to crouch as we made our way through its musty darkness. When we finally emerged into the forest, the relief of open space and fresh air was palpable. Which way? Reed asked, scanning the trees with alert eyes. I oriented myself, finding the position of the sun through the cloud cover. East. About 20 minutes on foot. We moved through the forest as quietly as possible, though to my human ears, every twig snap and rustle of leaves seemed dangerously loud. The warriors moved with predatory grace, constantly scanning our surroundings, while Lore Master Wren kept pace with surprising stamina for a scholar. The Heartwood Oak appeared suddenly before us, a massive tree that seemed ancient when all the surrounding forest was young. Its trunk was wider than 3 men standing side by side, its gnarled branches reaching toward the cloud-darkened sky like supplicating arms. I approached it slowly, memories washing over me, my mother kneeling beside 5-year-old me, her gentle hand pointing to a particular pattern in the bark. Remember this, Clara. Remember the way the wood spirals here, like a key turning. There, I breathed, placing my hand on a whorl in the trunk where the wood formed an unmistakable spiral pattern. This is it. Lore Master Wren joined me, her eyes widening. Remarkable. A living lock, hidden in plain sight. She gestured to the silver key still hanging around my neck. Try it. With trembling fingers, I removed the key and examined the spiral pattern more closely. Near its center was a small, almost imperceptible indentation. I pressed the key against it, and to my amazement, it sank into the wood as though the solid oak were liquid. A soft click echoed through the forest, followed by a grinding sound as a section of the trunk swung inward, revealing a narrow passage down into darkness. She hid her most precious treasure inside a living heart, I whispered, remembering my mother's words. She meant me. I was the treasure she was protecting. Reed stepped forward, peering into the darkness. I'll go first, he said, drawing his sword. No, I replied, surprising myself with my confidence. This was meant for me. I should go first. After a moment's hesitation, he nodded, though his expression remained concerned. We'll be right behind you. The passage within the tree defied natural laws. It should have been confined by the width of the trunk, yet it opened into a spiraling staircase that descended deep underground. Soft blue light emanated from crystals embedded in the walls, illuminating our way. Moon crystals, Lore Master Wren murmured in awe. I've only read about them in the oldest texts. They're said to store moonlight itself. The staircase ended in a circular chamber that took my breath away. The walls were lined with more moon crystals, their gentle radiance revealing a space that was part library, part living quarters, part shrine. Shelves held books and scrolls, while a small bed sat in one corner. In the center of the room stood a stone pedestal with a shallow basin carved into its top. "A sanctuary," Ren breathed, turning slowly to take it all in. "Your mother created a sanctuary that only you could access." I moved to the shelves, running my fingers over book spines with titles in languages I couldn't read. One volume stood out, a leather-bound journal with my mother's familiar handwriting. I opened it with reverent hands. "My dearest Clara," I read aloud, my voice catching. "If you are reading this, then you have found your way back to your heritage and discovered the key to your true self. I cannot know what age you will be when you find this place, or what circumstances have led you here, but I hope you will forgive me for the lies I was forced to tell." I continued reading silently, tears blurring my vision as my mother's words explained everything. How she had been forced to flee when betrayal came from within her own court. How she had used ancient magic to bind my wolf nature to protect me from those who would detect it. How she had chosen to live as a human healer to keep me safe. Near the end, one passage made my heart stop. "The binding spell can only be broken by your own choice, using the moon key in the sacred basin when the moon is directly overhead. But be warned, my daughter, once your wolf is freed, there is no returning to the simpler life you have known. Choose wisely, and choose when you are ready." I looked up from the journal to find the others exploring different parts of the chamber. Reed and his warriors had discovered a weapons cache hidden behind a tapestry, while Ren was examining the stone basin with scholarly interest. "This is a moon font," she explained when she noticed my attention. "Ancient werewolves used them in coming-of-age rituals. The basin would be filled with water that had absorbed a full moon's light, creating a conduit for transformation magic." She gestured to the ceiling, where I now noticed a small circular opening. When the moon is directly above, its light would touch the water, activating any spell cast upon it. I glanced down at the journal, then back to the basin. My mother left instructions. "This is where I'm meant to break the binding spell, if I choose to." Reed approached, his expression grave. "Princess, we should return to the pack house. Night will fall soon, and Victor—" A howl cut through the air above us, a sound of hunting and triumph that made my blood run cold. "They've found us," Kira said, drawing her weapon. Eli rushed to the staircase, peering upward. Multiple scents, at least 5 wolves, approaching fast. Reed's face hardened. "They must have followed our trail. We need to hold the entrance. It's the only way in or out. But you're outnumbered," I protested. "We're trained warriors," he replied grimly. "We'll buy you time." He turned to Ren. "Stay with the princess. If we fall, seal the entrance if you can." Before I could object further, he and the other 2 warriors ascended the stairs, weapons ready. Lore Master Ren gripped my arm. "Princess, if Victor reaches you before moonrise, he'll kill you without hesitation. Your only chance may be to complete the unbinding ritual immediately." I stared at her in shock. "But it's not midnight yet. The moon won't be overhead." "No," she agreed. "But this chamber was built by your mother with old magic. I believe she created it so the ritual could be performed regardless of the moon's position." She pointed to a small lever beside the circular opening in the ceiling. "This likely opens a channel to redirect moonlight, even during daylight hours." Sounds of fighting echoed down the stairwell. Growls, the clash of metal, cries of pain. Above it all, I heard Victor's voice. "Find the half-breed. Bring me her head." Terror gripped me. "I'm not ready," I whispered. "I don't know how to be a werewolf, a princess. You've been both all along," Ren said fiercely. "The binding only hid your nature. It didn't change who you are." She moved to a small cistern built into the wall and filled a silver cup with water. "Your mother prepared everything you would need. The choice is yours, but it must be made now." The sounds of battle grew closer. A pained howl that might have been Reed tore through the air, followed by triumphant snarls. With shaking hands, I took the silver key from around my neck. "What do I do?" "Pour the water into the basin," Ren instructed, handing me the cup. "Place the key in the water, then pull the lever to bring down the moonlight." I did as she directed, the water shimmering as it filled the shallow basin. The silver key seemed to glow beneath its surface. I reached for the lever, hesitating only a moment before pulling it downward. A shaft of brilliant silver light shot through the opening above, striking the water with impossible brightness. The basin began to glow, the water turning luminescent as the key at its center pulsed with power. "Now place your hands in the water and claim your heritage," Ren urged. "Quickly!" The sounds from the stairwell grew louder. Snarls, running footsteps. Time had run out. I plunged my hands into the glowing water. The moment my skin touched the liquid, fire seemed to race up my arms and spread throughout my body. I gasped as decades of suppressed wolf instincts flooded my consciousness all at once. Heightened senses, primal emotions, raw power. The world exploded into vibrant detail. Scents I'd never noticed filled my nose. Sounds I'd never heard reached my ears. My bones began to shift beneath my skin, muscles stretching and reshaping as the transformation took hold. Pain unlike anything I'd ever experienced tore through me, a scream ripping from my throat that transformed midway into a howl. The last thing I saw before my human vision gave way to wolf sight was Victor bursting into the chamber, his face contorted with hate as he lunged toward me. Then my wolf rose fully within me, pale gold like my hair, strong and fierce and unafraid. We were separate no longer. We were one being, the princess and the wolf united at last. I met Victor's attack not as Clara the servant girl, but as Clara, Alpha Princess of the Eastern Territories. My jaws closed on his throat, even as he shifted to wolf form mid-leap. The battle that followed was instinct and fury, my newly awakened wolf fighting with the hereditary skill of royal blood. Victor was larger, more experienced, but I fought with the rage of one who had been denied her true self for too long. When it ended, Victor lay still at my feet, his life ebbing away as Reed and the others, wounded but alive, staggered into the chamber. I shifted back to human form through sheer force of will, the transformation smoother than the first but still disorienting. Reed quickly wrapped a cloak around my shoulders, his eyes wide with something like awe. "Princess," he said, dropping to one knee. The others followed suit, even Lore Master Ren. "The throne of the Eastern Territories is yours by blood and by conquest." Hours later, as moonlight bathed the great hall of the pack house, I stood beside King Alaric before the assembled nobility of the Northern Territories. No longer in servant's gray, but dressed in the royal blue of my mother's house, the silver key now fashioned into a crown that rested upon my head. Two packs divided by tragedy. Alaric's voice carried to every corner of the hall, now reunited through courage and blood. His amber eyes met mine, filled with respect, and something deeper, something that made my newly awakened wolf stir with recognition. "The prophecy spoke true," he continued. "The Blood Moon Child has returned to bridge worlds long separated, not through destruction, but through transformation." He held out his hand to me, and I took it without hesitation, our fingers intertwining as naturally as our fates. "The Eastern Territories rise again," I announced, my voice steady and sure, "not in opposition to the Northern Pack, but in alliance with it. Together, we forge a new future, one where strength comes not from isolation, but from unity." As the assembly erupted in cheers, some hesitant, some wholehearted, Alaric leaned close, his lips near my ear. "And what of us, Clara? What future do you see there?" I turned to face him fully, the servant girl and wolf princess now one being, comfortable in both skins, a door not yet opened. I replied, echoing my mother's words with new meaning. "But I think I've found the key."